Joining us now is Ruby Chen, father of IDF soldier Itai Chen, a dual U.S. citizen who was one of the 7 U.S. hostages held by Hamas. Ruby, thank you for being with us again. I know what is a very difficult week for you and your family and an impossibly difficult year that one can't even fathom what you have been going through. How are you today?
Well, that's a difficult question. I don't think you would have thought that we would be doing this a year after. I'll try to answer in a different way, Jose, if I may. I listened yesterday at the 1-year anniversary to the State Department Press Secretary, Matthew Miller. And the first thing that he opened up his opening comments was stating the 7 U.S. hostages by name, including my son. And then there was an hour of questions, and not one question was about the U.S. hostages. And the feeling that it makes us feel is invisible, less of a priority. And I would maybe even challenge and say, you know, Israel from day one has said the way to get to a ceasefire is to release the hostages. And that hasn't changed. And where are we on the hostage deal?
You know, Ruby, it's so interesting what you tell us about that press conference appearance, right? Because it says a lot about the question. Sometimes there's a lot more said about the silence than the questions that are asked. And so I'm just wondering, with so much silence, and it's almost as though, you know, for the Jewish people, that's been something that has been almost a constant, right? The silencing, the avoiding, the trying to keep their reality from being heard and respected. And I'm just wondering, with so much silence, what is it that you think we could all do to bring the light of information on issues of such importance, like what happened to your son? Where are those other 100 hostages? What happened to them? How can we, Ruby, help shine the light of information?
It's an awesome question, and I doubt we'll be able to deep dive into that now, Jose. But I will share that we, have a weekly conversation with a White House representative, and we had one on Sunday, and I asked him an odd question, but one thing that I would like to share with the viewers. We on these calls have been 8 U.S. citizens, families, for a long time. And a month ago, tragically, we suddenly became 7. And I asked this White House representative, what has changed in the policy? We've seen the execution of a U.S. citizen. What has changed in the policy? And I don't think that I got a very honest answer of how they felt when they saw, the news about the killing of Hush. But where's the change? And I think that is a question that I would also ask, the State Department and anyone else. And I would say we are towards the end of this administration. I would even call out to President Biden to one of the last things that he does, come here to the Middle East, get everybody in the same room as you, do it in Egypt, do it in Tel Aviv, wherever, and get the deal done. If not, do it the other way. Call everybody, 9 a.m. Monday, Camp David. Nobody's out until the deal is done. And this is a U.S. interest to get stability in the region of the Middle East. And as we've been saying for 1 year, the key to get to that stability is the hostages. And I remind all my fellow Americans, there are 7 U.S. citizens that are being held captive, no medical attention, no doctors visiting, We have no idea who was killed, who was not. And after 1 year, this administration needs to find a different way to get to that finish line.
Hey, Ruby, I running out of time, but I just, I see you there, and right behind you is that smiling boy of yours that so enjoyed being a New Yorker. As a father, I'm just wondering, how do you, Ruby, how do you keep going? And when, other people tell you stories or news or even, that maybe his fate is not the one that one would hope and pray for. How do you keep going, Ruby? And that smile of that kid is just like so powerful.
Jose, you have that as well. And I'm sure you would agree with me that we have an obligation to our kids. My obligation is bringing him back. Whatever status it might be, he needs to come back. And being pessimistic is not an option. And yeah, what happened last month with Hush, that was one to the gut. But I don't see any other option, Jose. We need to get everybody behind this. And I call again on my senators, my congressmen, to do more, find creative ways to get this to the finish line. I would like to share, we also met with the Secretary of Treasury, Yellen, last time that I was in DC. And it's not just military pressure, it's also economic sanctions. And I did my homework beforehand, and money is still flowing into Hamas, still flowing into Gaza from NATO allies of the United States, from Gulf countries in the Middle East. And if you don't suck out that oxygen, there's no pressure on them to cut a deal. If they're able to pay tens of millions of dollars to tens of thousands of people, militants, operators, then it's not working. And we're supposed to have a follow-up meeting with the Secretary's team. And I'm waiting to hear about more sanctions, not just about Hamas, but who's Hamas' daddy? It's Iran. And they're also helping them function. So how do we go after Iran in such a way that there is accountability for failed negotiations? Today, we don't see that accountability.
Ruby, I thank you very much for being with us. Very much appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for having us. And I hope we don't need to do this in a second year.